this morning is whether security, because of recent developments, will replace health care at the top of the legislative agenda. And here to weigh in, Republican Congressman Steve Scalise, who's from Louisiana, and Democratic Congresswoman Allison Schwartz, who's from Pennsylvania. Congresswoman Schwartz, since the Democrats are certainly the power in party, let me start with you. Is that a fair question that because of the recent developments we've had while you guys were on recess, that the national security is a much more prominent issue now as you return to Washington?
Well, the fact is that we're going to have to deal with the security issue. We're deeply concerned, I think all of us, Republicans and Democrats, about what happened on Christmas Day. And we're going to be monitoring what the president says today, of course, and going forward, we're going to deal with the issues of security and protecting Americans. There's no question about that. Right. But that does not mean that we're going to set aside health care. We are gotten so close. We are going to reconcile the House and Senate bills, and we're going to finally tackle this really major challenge facing American families, businesses, and the government.
Well, as you
to
do
make
that,
sure that all Americans
as you
have
do that,
access to affordable coverage.
Congresswoman Schwartz, is it fair to say that you'll be doing it with all but a carbon copy of the Senate's health care bill, now that it looks like the conference process is being bypassed and what have you? And if so, are you comfortable with that? No public option, a more moderate bill than what you guys passed in the House?
Well, you know, there's so much about the two bills that are quite similar. And so I do believe that there will be some changes. Look, you're talking to a House member here. You know, we believe that I feel strongly about our bill. But the fact is that there's so much common ground between the two bills.
Would you vote for the Senate bill?
Well, we are going to make some changes. We're going to make some changes to strengthen, to make sure that it's affordable for American families, to make sure that we tackle some of the challenges. I mean, I've been really interested in primary care, making sure that we do a better job of making sure we have enough primary care providers, physicians, and nurses, for example. And so there will be, I think, a substantial amendment to the Senate
here
bill.
In just a second, but
okay,
bottom
and then we'll
line,
get it done.
Yes or no, if it was the Senate bill, you would vote.
Bottom line is we'll get it done.
You'll get, well, so something will get done. There'll be a compromise.
Absolutely.
Congressman Scalise, let me get you involved in this. Thanks for waiting there patiently from New Orleans this morning. It is a bill that you have not supported, that there had been hardly any, well, really no Republican support for. But to Congresswoman Schwartz's point, it looks like it's going to get done now, doesn't it?
Well, you know, and of course the president didn't reach out to any Republicans because we had really good solutions to solve the problems in health care. Unfortunately, they're going to just try to ram through this government takeover. Their bill, the bill coming over from the Senate, still has over $500 billion in new taxes on small business and families, and it's got about $500 billion in cuts to Medicare. The American people don't want this because it actually makes health care in America worse than it is today. Let's go back to the table and fix the real problems without the new taxes, without the mandates, and without the cuts to Medicare.
All right, so, but let me ask the original question, I didn't get you to weigh in on it, Congressman Scalise, of the priority shifting. Do you feel that will happen at all with all the national security concerns that have been brought up over the recess time, with what happened on Christmas Day and the botched terror attack and what have you? Will health care and these other domestic issues have to take a back seat in your view?
Well, from the beginning, the president hasn't been focusing on the things the American people want us to be dealing with in Congress, like creating jobs and protecting our homeland. And hopefully he'll shift courses and actually focus on those real items. And, you know, he's got to first admit that we are in a war against terror. And he's been reluctant to admit that. You know, a lot of people's jaws dropped right after this Christmas Day attack when the Secretary of Homeland Security came out and said everything worked well. Well, everything did not work well.
Well, the president
did not
has said many times that we're in a war against al-Qaeda. I mean, in all fairness, right? I mean, he sees this, as you do, as a war.
Yeah, but in policy, you know, he's got to scrap this reckless idea of sending these detainees from Guantanamo to the United States and trying them in American courts. They should leave Gitmo open. They surely should not release any of those Yemenis terrorist suspects back to Yemen, which was being proposed. And then let's stop this idea of closing Gitmo and bringing those terrorists to the United States. Keep them there where they need to be dealt with appropriately. They're terrorists. They're not people that were arrested for speeding.
Let me ask Congresswoman Schwartz about that, because that is an interesting topic that the congressman brings up. The terrorists that have been in Guantanamo Bay, or suspected terrorists, that are sent back to their countries of origin. In this case, Yemen obviously has become a hotbed and one that's talked about. Should we at least take a break from that, a policy that in fairness had been begun under the Bush administration and continued under President Obama in the last year? We take a break, say, hey, let's wait a minute, see how this plays out, or continue with it?
Well, I think the president has already said that, in fact, we are going to look very carefully. Yemen's going to be treated differently. They're already on one of those critical watch lists. Anyone coming in from Yemen is going to be screened very differently, and that's very important. I agree with that. And that we are not going to release back those Yemeni prisoners at Guantanamo. Look, the fact is that we have to charge those prisoners, and we have to prosecute them, and we have to make sure they are punished. And that is what I think the American people want to see happen, and that is what we should do.
But what about the
it's
distinction
important for our
between
own
enemy
protection.
combatants and criminal courts here in the United States?
Well, the fact is that they have to be prosecuted, and they have to be charged and prosecuted. And I think each one as a decision has to be made as to what is appropriate, given what they've done. The fact is that we want to see them prosecuted. We want to see them tried. And we all are very concerned, Republicans and Democrats. This is a time for us to really find common ground here. We all want to fight terrorists. We all understand that there are serious threats against this country, and we're going to take the proper actions to protect Americans. That is not a partisan issue. That should be really an American issue.
Congresswoman Allison Schwartz out of Pennsylvania, Congressman Steve Scalise out of Louisiana. Thanks to both of you. Appreciate you both coming on today.
Thanks, Connell.
Quick break. Opening bell. We'll be right back here at Fox Business.